died the first 2 years, you would have never seen any of these cars here except the one that's over there. They have one of Harley Earl's cars over there, 54. 53 was the first, but you should take a look at it. It looks like it was created on a different planet from that one there. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kurt Benyon. I've been the exterior design manager on Corvette steady since about 2000, and that, so got a little bit of history with these cars. And I can tell you, for me, no one appreciates this change more. I mean, this is the most impactful change you'll see that's been done to the Corvette brand as we see it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Let's give the panelists a big round of applause. And so I'm just going to kick it off. We're all here. This is a Zora Duntov tribute today. So maybe, Josh, can you give us a little background on the Cirque 1 that's out there and Zora's vision for Corvette?
Yeah, so when Zora first came to General Motors and worked to improve the first generation Corvette, he had a vision that the ultimate in performance would come from something like a mid-engine layout. So the Cirque 1 that you can see here live was developed in 1960, Chevrolet engineering research vehicle. Zora called that car a powerful tool. We still use a term like that today, a learning tool. It's one car not necessarily meant for production, but to test the limits of design and vehicle performance. The second Serve 2 obviously, was built in 1964. I got the pleasure of being able to start that car once. It's pretty awesome, drive it like 10 feet, so I feel like a tiny part of history. Those cars, we're very proud to have those back in our collection. They're an important part of history, which Zora was obviously very monumental in. We talk a lot at work about Zora. He's not forgotten on us. Me personally, I never got to meet him. He's the only chief engineer I haven't had the privilege of working with, actually. But a number of us wear these yellow wristbands on it, and it says, "What would Zora do?" And so often, as we're working through the car, especially considering this car, the legacy of Corvette, doing something this radical with something so iconic was not lost on any of us. We wanted to make sure we took the car a step forward, but not screw up the legacy of this car. So we often ask ourselves as we're making decisions, working through whatever controversial topic might be around at the moment, what would Zora do?
Kirk, do you have anything to add to that? Anything on the design side?
As you appreciate, there's a long history starting with Serve 1 and Serve 2. Some of the notables, the Astro 2, it's a very beautiful car, and even for today, that was production intent. The Aerovette came later. Corvette Indy, was a big show car for us, very, very successful. We came out with that, 2 years after the C4 was launched, and very, very, very compelling, impactful design. Just the timing wasn't right for us to bring midship back then, unfortunately.
Well, glad it's back today. And Bill, what about the inception? I mean, tell us a little bit about Harley and that kind of initial reaction, and we'll get into the book a little later, but the creation of the Corvette.
Well, the Corvette, the idea came from this guy here, Harley Earl, who was GM's first vice president of design. He was, I think, the first vice president of design of any American company. And he was taking this car here on like a publicity tour to show it off. This was the car of the future, a very expensive thing that no one was ever going to drive with him. And he took it to Watkins Glen, the road race in upstate New York, to show off for the weekend. And while he was there, and he was being feted, he was a big celebrity, he noticed that all over town there were all these college kids, and they were driving MGs and Morgans and Jaguar XK120s. And the car that won the race and came in second and fourth was a Cunningham C2. They were little sports cars. And it hit him that, America didn't have a sports car for young people. There's nothing like it. So when he went back to GM, he got his people together and said, we should be the ones to make it. We should make a two-seater sports car, aim it at young people, make it sporty, light, no frills, and something they can afford. And then that's what they started doing. They did it in a secret room that nobody knew was. They called it the Opal Project, and it had a number, but they didn't have a name for it or anything like that. And they secretly began developing this car. Most people in the company didn't know it. And then when they finally got to a mock-up to show to someone, they showed it to the Chevrolet people because Chevrolet needed sort of an image boost. So that's how it started. And the first one was in '53, and that's a '54 out there. And they were the same. And they almost failed because in the first 2 years they sold less than 700 of them against the T-Bird, which sold like 50,000. So it's a good story, the competition between those two.
And then that's a good word, competition. I mean, Zora, I feel, brought that competition back and really made it a performance car.
Yes.
Where it was more of a kind of a touring car. And so I'm going to open this up to everyone. You know, what is it about Corvette? I mean, they're so obtainable, the performance is so high, that makes them that icon. I mean, in your eyes, I'll start with Mike, you know, especially in Southern California, what makes the Corvette so special?
Well, I fell in love with Corvettes back in the 60s. I was a youngster back east and worked in a gas station. And I would see the Stingrays, especially the 63 through 67s, come in and gas up. Fuel was 25 cents a gallon. For $5, you could fill the whole tank up. And so I would see them come in during the summer months, and off they would go down to the beach. And I thought to myself, I gotta have one of these cars one day. So it was a childhood dream, and I believe us Americans, we aspire to own them. Of course, there are other great European sports cars, but Corvette is America's sports car.
Thank you. Anyone else on what the Corvette really embodies, Bill?
Yeah, I'm gonna date myself a little bit here. I grew up in the '50s, and my dad was in the car business, so I was a car maniac from the time I was like 6 years old. And I remember when that '53 car came out, and the car, it was like I'd never seen anything like it. It was I was obsessed with it, and always have been to a degree. Corvette defined, a sports car for me. I knew all about all the European sports cars. I followed the Formula One circuit and all that when I was growing up, but the Corvette and certain Corvettes have always been in my heart, and you've got a couple of them here. I mean, you've got a 61 and a 62, which was right before the Stingray. Has the same back end. They kept the back end in the front, I was my favorite television show when I was like 10 or whatever else was Route 66, and they had a 61 and a 62. You've got both of them out there. Those are my favorite. I can't get beyond that. These are nice, and those things probably drive like a truck, but visually they speak to me.
Kurt, Josh?
Sure. I would tell you for me, growing up and looking at Corvettes, because they're a sports car, but what they look and how they look in that, they generate an emotional connection, when you see those cars. And when I would see one, I'd always think to myself, I want to get in one of these days. I would love to be driving that car. And that's something, within design that we embrace on doing this new car to make sure that it does evoke that emotional connection with our customers in that. We want you to feel like, hey, I want to be seen in this car. I want to be a part of this car. And like I said, that's something that we've held on to from our very beginning.
Yeah, it's funny. I can add one more thing. When I fell in love with the Corvettes was Harley would call it the face. Okay, the grill, the grill with the teeth in it. That's what I loved about Corvettes when I was a young kid. It was like falling in love with a face. You fell in love with Audrey Hepburn's face. So that still is the definitive face for me. The old Corvettes, before the Stingray, I was kind of looking askance at the Stingray when it came out. I was like, oh man, they changed the face of that. It doesn't look the same. That's me.
Yeah, I think everybody here has a story or can remember the first time they saw a Corvette. I agree with Mike. It's something a lot of us aspired to own as young people, yet attainable. It's still within reach for most of us. The performance value is outstanding. It's been our winning formula for almost 67 years. My wife and I are big Corvette fans. We have 5 of them. The oldest is 64, so we certainly appreciate the older designs. And the newest is a 2006, so all the way from classic design to more modern technology and performance. The Corvette has something for everyone. And I think as much about the car, it's about the people. The people here today is a good example. We come from all walks of life, from all different backgrounds, with one common thread that is the Corvette. And there are many lifelong friendships made around this car. People see each other at events around this car, maybe only once or twice a year, but stay in touch and have a camaraderie, all because of the Corvette.
Great answers. Thank you so much. And I think also, I mean, we're on a big anniversary this year, and I think, Mike brought it up. I think, as an American icon, 50 years ago we made it to the moon, and having the astronauts, astronauts were the kings of cool. I mean, everybody wanted to be an astronaut, and still, I think everybody still wants to be an astronaut. And having the astronauts be representatives of Corvette and have them, I think they were $1, right? They had to buy them, but they bought them for $1. It's such a cool thing to say, is that you drive the same car that an astronaut drives. And I'll open this up to Kirk and Josh. I mean, what is that connection? I mean, what was the strategy behind bringing that achievement for America into the Corvette? That history of the astronauts, yeah.
I guess I'll answer it this way. We've been asked, was that planned? I would say with the inception of the car, we didn't plan to reveal it around the anniversary. It was more of a happy coincidence. Obviously, as the date got closer, our brilliant marketing and communication folks thought they could deliver something very cool, and we all think they did. But it's just one more tie-in that the Corvette has with the American icon that is, the space program, the car, the astronauts that drove the cars, the pursuit of all-out performance. So it's kind of a fortuitous sequence of events and certainly a milestone anniversary.
Fantastic, thank you. And so I know it's really hot. I'm actually going to have, Bill?
I'll say one more thing about GM. GM's dedication to the Corvette is really amazing, because in the beginning they had every reason to stop doing it. It wasn't doing well, but they always persevered with this car. They just believed in this car. I don't know why. The guys who work for GM probably do, but they believed this, and they were never going to let this car die, and they never have. It's still here, and could have stopped a lot of times along the way. But it meant something to them, more than just a model of a car. They never fought that hard for any other model car that I know of. Anyway, that's it.
Just a quick story about Mr. Duntoff. Zora and Elfie were good friends, as well as Larry Shinoda of mine. And it was 1991, we held the National Corvette Convention, the NCRS convention in Anaheim at the Grand Hotel, and Zora was there. And I had the pleasure of taking him and Elfie and Larry Shinoda and his wife to dinner. But I gotta be honest with you, I could never understand a word the guy said.
It was a good dinner. All right, so I know it's really hot. I want to thank Chevrolet, Michelin, Bring a Trailer, Haggerty for making today possible, especially, Chevrolet bringing this amazing car out, the C8. I'm actually going to come out to you guys. If you have any questions for the panelists, for Kirk or for Josh, I'll come out and you can ask them. In a little bit, Bill's going to be at the Red Peterson tent signing some books. And then about 20 minutes, we'll make the announcements for the awards for all the cars on display. I want to thank you so much for joining us today at the Peterson. This is a monumental moment. We unveiled the C7, and now having the privilege and honor to unveil the new C8 is huge. And so if anybody has a question, raise their hand. I'll come out to you. All right.
Yeah, the question I have is, first of all, the vehicle is absolutely fantastic looking. The stories I heard up there, I started with the 1991 Acura NSX, kind of built that up and took it around and had it for years, started the car club for American Honda, and also I had some involvement with Ford back in high school, 65, 289 high performance going on. But anyways, I saw the TV commercial or YouTube, and the president came out and bought off the two astronauts. I'm a big supporter of NASA. My cousin's Katherine Johnson. She'll be 101 years old. Her husband actually had a Corvette, and they said, hey, make sure you get out there and see that new Corvette and send some pictures. She'll be 101 next month on the 25th. She calculated the trajectory to get us there and back, so I'm very proud of that. But the astronauts and Chevy with the GM and the Corvette is phenomenal, and I want to carry that legacy in Southern California, because in Southern California, that's where it's all happens, right here. Everybody wants to be in Southern California from all over the world, and you gentlemen up there really appreciate what you've done with this car, because it's absolutely amazing. And having that NSX for so many years, I put 250,000 miles on it. I'm probably going to park it in the garage and start with the Corvette. So thank you guys very much. Back to America, red, white, and blue. Back to the basics. Thank you guys.
Thanks for coming in and talking to us, but I just have one question. When you guys are kind of thinking about the next car, what feature should we be looking for in the next 10 years for these Corvettes? Is there one thing that you guys said, we would love this to be the next step or the next evolution?
I'll take that on. I would tell you within each Corvette generation, I mean, we usually have, for Josh and I, we have a catalog of ideas that we'd like to get into the car. And I would say that, you know, you can't always get all those ideas. So what we do is we more or less, we keep those in that catalog, and we just carry it as we go through the lineup. So, yeah, for future product, we can't say, but we do keep, like I said, a treasure of future performance ideas that if we can develop them earlier on, we can, but we try to keep those goals in front of us.
Hi, thank you for being here today. I just have one question. The C7 is such a fabulous Corvette. It's got the Nürburgring record right now, and it's got the same performance characteristics. Although I appreciate the electronics, what I've read about on the new one. What was your prime motivation for moving that engine to a mid-engine car, instead of leaving it the way it was with the performance numbers you're already racking up?
So as good as the 7th generation is, a lot of us feel, and we have data to prove, that the car has really reached its limits. I mean, we've got a ZR1 that's got 755 horsepower, and to be able to connect all that power to the road at all times is a challenge with the current architecture. And moving the engine to the rear, changing the center of gravity, moving the driver's position forward is a quantum leap in our ability to take big, powerful V8s, which have long been a mainstay of Corvettes, and being able to use that power like never before. Those of us that have driven Corvettes most of our life and are used to the judicious way you have to apply the throttle and be careful with what you have under the hood, will be a game changer when you get in this all-new car. The way it can connect, the way it can put power down, not just in a straight line, but coming out of a corner, is a pretty massive shift in performance.
What are your goals for Nürburgring? What's the top speed you're looking for?
So the question is, what's the goal for the Nürburgring and what's the top speed, which we actually do at Papenburg in Germany. We're going to announce those later. I would just caveat by saying that, we go to Nürburgring to develop the car. We don't go there to set a lap time. That's why on some of our cars we don't have a lap time. It sounds cliche, but I'm serious when I say that's not the mission of a Nürburgring trip. If we can get one, we'll certainly communicate it. But the goal is to develop a car. That's a very punishing environment for a car. There's a lot of nuances to that length of a track, and so we learn a lot by going there and work to not just develop the car to improve its performance on that track, but improve its performance everywhere.
Thanks for the presentation, really appreciate it. What was the weight of the Serve 2? Do you know what the weight? And the other question would be, was Jim Hall involved in the Serve 2 at all?
Sorry, I think you stumped the panel. I know I can get the weight from Google. The car's super light, and as a reminder, that car's all-wheel drive. A lot of people don't realize or remember that car, and even with the extra mechanicals powering all four wheels, it's still a pretty light car. When you get up to it and walk around the Serve 2, you can see that there isn't a part on that car that doesn't serve a serious mission.
The reason I ask is what I read is the dry weight of that car was like 750 pounds, 500 horsepower, 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds, and that was back in the 60s.
Yeah,
That's pretty amazing.
It is amazing. I'm confident it's a little more than 700 pounds, but it was a super lightweight car, especially for the time. Yeah, absolutely.
Another question?
This question comes up again and again and again on the forums, and I even heard this question out here in the audience. So the question is regarding the ride quality. How does the Z51 with MRC on tour mode compare with the base suspension in terms of ride quality? And it's kind of apropos here in California. Unfortunately, our roads are some of the worst actually in the nation.
I challenge your assertion that your roads are worse than Southeast Michigan. I would say we've said this before that the MR which is available on the Z51, the option code is FE4. When that system is on tour mode, the car is as supple as our most base suspension, and that remains true on the new car. What is very different about the new car, however, is the whole bandwidth has been moved in a fantastic way. The ride isolation on this car with our coil-over springs, I don't know that everyone knows that we've moved away from the composite leaf construction, which was a very lightweight and efficient design. But unfortunately, it didn't allow us to get the powertrain as low in the car as we wanted to get in this all-new car, which we've been able to do. And that coil-over shock design is mounted directly to the knuckle. It's a direct-acting system. The lower control arm has a very straight lateral link and a more ride-isolating compliant ride bushing link. So that, coupled with our structure that's 10% stiffer than the C7, provides fantastic ride isolation. When people get in the car, they're going to be blown away that a car that has this much performance rides the way that this car does. It's a quantum leap.
I have a question for Kirk and for Josh. What is your favorite part of creating a car like this?
Well, I would tell you that probably my favorite part would be in creating the new architecture. We've walked up, Josh and I, we worked on, the last 3 generations of front engine cars. But it was really great to be able to start with a clean sheet of paper, establish, unique track wheelbase position for the occupant, and create a very compelling proportion. It's a big win for design in this new layout, as well as performance and the customer roominess.
And Kirk is being a little modest. I'm going to speak for him. He and his team are a bunch of wizards, in my biased opinion. If you look at this car and the surfaces on it, every single surface, every square inch of that car is serving some kind of a purpose. Whether it's reducing drag, producing downforce, helping improve cooling. And the team started by moving the occupants in the car about 16.5 inches forward, rather than our traditional approach, which is starting with the wheelbase and packaging a car around it. We really designed this car around the driver. Other subtle things people don't really think about, but for example, all the cars, all Corvettes are effectively convertibles. You can take the roof panel out of the car. The structure is designed as a convertible. We know that to make a car useful, you have to be able to stow that roof. And so to be able to optimize a roof opening and package a roof, effectively set up the length of the car, and for his team and our entire team to optimize that design, be able to package the utility this car still affords with its exotic supercar proportions is something we're all very proud of.
Well, I think the car is absolutely spectacular. I think you guys probably all think the same. I want to thank the panelists. Let's give the panelists a huge round of applause for joining us today. Josh, Kirk, thank you so much for joining us. The car is spectacular. I'm going to have Bill go over to the Red Peterson tent. He's going to be signing his books. And then in about 5 minutes, I'm going to have the Bring a Trailer team and Lincoln from my team do the announcements for the awards. We'll be announcing the Best in Show, Peterson Perfection, and the People's Choice. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you driving all your cars out. I know some cars were even driven from out of state. It's amazing. It's amazing to have this amount of car enthusiasm around such an iconic car, and the C8. Wow, it's amazing. Thank you.
Got a long time no see. Yes, it has been. There's a lot of